Welcome to the CQC video tutorial series. This is video 10, Final Navigation. Hello, welcome back, and in this video we are going to pick up with our navigation explorations. And in previous videos we've done some basic navigation, and in this case we're going to do our final navigation. This is not to imply that this is the be-all and end-all of navigation, but this will be the one that we will actually use for any subsequent tutorial videos where we build up this actual set of templates that we're working on here. And in order to keep this from being too long, I've done a little bit of pre-work here. So I have created a main template, and I put it here in this final nav along with some content templates that we will load into an overlay, which I have here. And that's very similar to before. It's just that how we're going to do that loading will be better in this case. We're going to use a toolbar as a menu. In this case, I've turned off any border on the overlay, and I just put a couple of lines above and below it as separators. And we could use some images here to make this look nicer, but I wanted to keep this very simple. And this also makes it very easy for you to resize it to fit your needs. What I've done in order to make this work out really nicely is that when we put the menu bar up here, we want to actually have the button that is associated with the actual content loaded into the overlay to be marked, which is a nice way to do it and not uncommon. So what we're going to do is create a global variable, and then we will use a variation of the toolbar that will use that global variable to mark one of the buttons. So then each one of these templates that we load into it will just set that global variable to its value. So if we look at the actions for the actual template itself, all I've done here is just create a variable, and it's of string type, and the limit, which constrains the values that it can have, is what we call an enumerated type, which means that it enumerates specific values that this variable can have. And I'm setting them up in the same order that I'm going to put them in the toolbar, which is important because the value selected will be used to find the correct button to mark. Right? And then in the actual content templates that we're going to load into the overlay, which I've just got some text in them right now to make sure that we're loading the right thing. If we look at those, each one of those just sets that variable to its own value. So lighting sets it to lighting, music to music, weather to weather. And that just ensures that no matter how we load these templates into the overlay, that the toolbar will always pick up that change and will mark itself appropriately. All right, so now let's create our toolbar and we'll set that up. So I'm doing new and meters, bars, and graphs. And this is variable toolbar. So sorry, as usual, these things are off your screen. And toolbars can have each of the buttons. This is just a sample button here, but each of the buttons can have an image and some text. We're not going to use the image, just the text. So let's edit the buttons here. So if we go down to buttons in the toolbar settings, let's first get rid of that image. And then we're going to set up our buttons here. So the first one will be lighting. And then we'll add another, which will be music, and we'll add another, which will be weather. And now we just want to have each one of these load the overlay. So let's just set the action for each of those. So we'll select lighting, edit the action, and then we just send a command to that main overlay to load itself. And then we will select the particular template we want to load, which is mine, final nav, and lighting. And I'm going to check this return relative path option here. And what that will do will give us a relative path, which means that this whole set of templates that we're creating can be moved somewhere else if we want to later, and it won't be affected because it won't be using full absolute paths to the templates that it loads. And let's just copy all of those commands. And we'll do the same thing for the rest of them, except we'll just change the particular template loaded. Paste all those, and then we'll select music, and paste all those, and we'll select weather. Okay, now let's size that down, and we can also size this up to fit here. It'll be a while before we have enough buttons that we will actually be able to scroll it, but the toolbar is scrollable, which makes it a very convenient menu mechanism because we can have more buttons than we have space for. We can also size the buttons. I'm going to size those up just a little bit in case we have some longer ones later. If we go down here to the size option, I'll just right arrow and size this up a bit. And keep in mind that the lines there around them are not really there. Those are just showing you where the slots are. And that's convenient if you were to have, say, an image that this is being laid over, and that image has slots for the buttons to go into. This lets you be sure that you're lining them up. And now if we were to test this, let's just go ahead and save it. I'll do a save all. And let me load the interface viewer. And this is something from another video here. So I'm just going to open the one that we're working on. It's actually from the auto generation video. If you're interested, that's ones that we can generate for you, which are quite nice. But in this case, of course, we're learning how to do this type of thing ourselves. So we're loading main, and I didn't set it to load one automatically, so it's not loading one. But if we hit lighting, music, and weather, of course, it's not marking it because we haven't set up any different colors for that. So let's do that now, and then we should see it mark itself. So if we select the toolbar, and let's set the so we have mark text and mark shadow. So let's set the mark text to some kind of dark orangish, maybe something like that. Be kind of nice. And actually, let's get rid of this regular, just kind of simple shadow and use one of the fancy blurred shadows. So I'll do an effect of drop shadow, and we need to set the shadow colors appropriately. So the shadow effects, we want to get it pretty dark. And the same for the marked shadow, we want it pretty dark. And now we can go down here to the shadow offset, and I'm just holding Alt here, and that lets me use the arrow keys to move. You can see that the shadow is moving around a bit now. So now let's try that again, and we should see the current one light up. And actually, before we do that, let's also set our initial template to load. And that will also prove that even though we're not explicitly setting a mark, when it loads this initial one, that should get the correct one marked. So let's just set lighting as the one to load initially. And again, return a relative path. So let's save and go back to the interface viewer. And as usual, when developing, turn off this caching so that you can see changes immediately. And let's reload. Oops, and we did not get a mark there. And why is that? Oh, because I didn't set the variable. So we have to tell it which variable to use. Sorry. And this is it here. I previously added it to my variable cheat sheet to make it easy to find. So I'll select that. And now let's save it, and that should work now. There we go. And the one that is selected lights up. If we select this one, that will light up, and then that will light up. Okay, so we have our basic menu there. And now let's just put a little bit of common information down at the bottom here, which is also a fairly likely thing to do. So I'm going to put, say, the time on this side and the date on this side. So I'm going to do new, and this will be a date time and a static time text. So what this is going to do is just show us the local time. So it's not getting the time from a field or anything like that. It's just showing the local time on this machine. And we want to format this out a bit. So if we go to the format here, this allows us to put various things into the format and into the formatted time. And in our case, you can basically just select things up here and hit the down arrow, and that will insert it wherever you are in the entry field here. In our case, we really just want the hour and the minute, and it shows you a preview down here. So let's save that, and let's center that. So I'm doing Control-Alt-H, which is toggling horizontal justification. And I'm going to size that down a bit since we don't need all that. And actually, let's just copy that because we're going to do something very similar for the date. So let's paste that, put it over here, and let's get those aligned. Actually, I'll select them both and use the vertical alignment, and I'll then sort of get them straight separately aligned or lined together so that they're kind of equal distance from each edge. And now let's take that guy and we'll set a date on it. So I'll remove this stuff, and we want say the month as a name, as an abbreviated name. Stick that in, and then we'll do a comma, and then we'll say the day as a number, and then the year as 4 digits, something like that. Right? So we save that, and I'm going to size that up just a little bit more, because it might take up a little bit of space and we don't want it to wrap around. And we can probably size that down a little bit, tighten that up so that they're kind of similar looking. Okay, so there we go. Let's now go load that. And there we go. So that's a fairly common sort of layout. We could put some more stuff along the bottom. We might put the current temperature or something like that. I'm not sure if we have a weather driver loaded. We could do that now. And we do. So let's do that. So I will just do new and textual, and then this will be field text, because we're going to get some text from a field of the weather driver. Kind of center it here, toggle it into the center there. And now let's select the correct field. And this will be weather. And we want the current temperature. And that will, of course, show up when the time comes. And we could, if we wanted to, actually add it here, add a little prefix here, but I think probably that's good enough. Let's see what it looks like. To reload, and 76 for the degrees. And let's add a prefix to it, or a suffix, let's say. So what we can do is put a %, I believe it is V for value, and then some extra text, and the %V will be replaced by the actual value. So let's try that. Oops, obviously it's not V. Maybe it's F for field. Sorry. You'd think I would know these things. There we go. All right, so there is our basic layout, and this will be what we will continue to develop. As I said before, size this appropriately for your needs, and because of this particular layout, it's very simple to resize, no images or anything to deal with. And you can also add some more of these content overlays for your needs as well. And it should be pretty obvious from what you've seen here as to how to go about that. Just copy and paste one of the existing ones and update it. And eventually, of course, we will fill in some of this content here to replace just the placeholder text. So that's it, and we'll see you in the next video.